Guys, so today we're going to be talking about bonding our bunnies. This morning I did a little bit of a quick cleaning in here. I missed a poop, but there was a lot of poop around here I had to clean up. I changed their litter box, I gave them new hay, and she is taking all the hay out of there. Did you just see that? You better eat it out of the box. I tell you what, that's a waste of hay, Missy. So anyway, we're talking about bonding today. These two were not always bonded. I bought them 2 weeks apart from the local animal shelter. I got Milo first, who is the lop here, and I got him back in April. He is not the first bunny that I've had. I have had 4 bunnies in the past, and they were all free-range bunnies. In an apartment that I had, and I didn't have them all at once, so no worries there. I had 2 at a time. Back then, I didn't know how necessarily to do the bonding. I didn't know as much back then, sadly, as I do now. So I didn't do a proper bonding process. Therefore, they didn't really get along, and I had to free range them in separate rooms. But since then, now that information is more readily available, and I had done my share of research back then, but, information is at our fingertips now, which is awesome. So I hate to say there's no excuse for not knowing, but in all honesty, that is the truth, because there is no excuse for not knowing what your pet needs. It's just that too many people impulse buy and they'll get the animal before they know everything that they need to know. And I am guilty of that in the past. But this time around, I knew a lot more before I got them. They were a partial impulse buy. Well, at least Milo was, because I went to the animal shelter with the intention of getting a couple of guinea pigs, which I had also researched and have kept in the past, but kept incorrectly in the past in enclosures that were too small. But since the guinea pigs that I had my eye on were adopted, I went ahead and decided on Milo. And the only reason I was okay with this impulse buy is because I was familiar with rabbits. Look at the mess you made. You better clean that up. So, I got him, and then I was like, you know what? I still did that wrong. They need a buddy. So, he needs a buddy. So 2 weeks later, I went back to the animal shelter with the intention of a different bunny. Hi, guys. And saw her. And I spent a little time with her. And I spent a little time with the other one. And I decided with her. Now here is where it gets important, guys. Since I have a male and I have a female, they need to be fixed or you will have babies. You will have babies. And I didn't want to have babies. Plus, spaying and neutering is much healthier for them. They will live longer, healthier lives without the risk of testicular cancer or ovarian cancer. I lucked out with them because since I got them from the animal shelter, they were both already spayed and neutered. And I do encourage you to go to your local animal shelter if they have check to see if they have other other animals other than dogs and cats. Many people are not aware that there are animal shelters that will take in other animals other than dogs and cats. My local animal shelter has rats, hamsters, birds, guinea pigs, gerbils. Not all the time, but every time I check it out, they have a lot of rabbits. Sometimes they're kept at the shelter themselves. or they are taken to one of the local pet stores where they are up for adoption, rather than sold like the others. And the bunnies, honestly, getting them from the animal shelter is the best way to go, because for number one, they will be spayed and neutered when you get them, and you won't have to pay that cost. And number two, they're cheaper. I spent $10 on Hera, and I spent $10 on Milo, and they were already fixed. You can't beat that. Whereas you go to a pet store and impulse buy, or even if you don't impulse buy, they're going to be $60+ for the bunny, and they're not spayed and neutered. And so you're going to have to find an exotic vet that is familiar with rabbits and can do that for you. And sometimes exotic vets can be expensive. So when I had my rabbits in the past, I did get 2 of them spayed and neutered. And I did pay for that cost because I got them from a pet store. They weren't as expensive back then as they were now, because that was probably about 18 years ago. But, yeah. So, and I do hear a lot about, I don't want to get them spayed or neutered, because I've heard horror stories of, them not making it, them dying on the operating table, or anything like that. And to that I say, whoever that happened to, they did not take them to a reputable exotic vet who's familiar with rabbits. You cannot take your rabbit to a dog and cat vet. You can't do it. They have different systems than dogs and cats do. It does not work. You have to find a reputable exotic breeder. And it is a surgery that is common for bunnies and is of minimal risk. It's going to have a risk just like any surgery does, even with people. But if the person knows what they are doing, they're going to come out of it fine. I have had no negative issues. Hi, honey. In fact, Hera was just finishing up her pain meds from being spayed when I adopted her. The day I adopted her, she had taken her last dosage of pain medication. Now, if you have 2 bunnies and you need to get them spayed and neutered, I suggest once you find your exotic vet, you make an appointment for one or both of them. If you can only do one that day, still send both of your bunnies. And make sure, let the vet know why you want to do this. It will cut down. Well, you know what? In that case, we haven't bonded them yet. I was going to say it cuts down on the stress, but they're not bonded yet. But make sure that you can pick up your bunny same day. No overnights. Bring them in to be spayed or neutered. Pick them up the same day to cut down on that stress level. Once they're bonded, if you're doing spaying and neutering, after that, then send them together, because that does cut down on it. But we're talking about bonding in this video, so in this scenario, they're not bonded. They will go alone. But you want it to be a one-day thing, not overnight. You don't want them stressed out for that long. Then the other thing will be, let me think. Okay, once they are spayed and neutered, you will not want to do the bonding process right away, because it takes up to a month for their hormones to level out. So, like with Hera, she had just been spayed and was finishing up. The dog is jumping on me. Hi. Bella. Goodness. Okay, hold on, guys. So anyway, yeah. Hera was spayed just days before she was adopted by me. So what I did was I just had her in a regular store-bought rabbit cage, which is too small, but temporarily this is what I did. And she was in it for the month. And Milo was in here. But I put the cage with Hera in it inside here. So they had access to each other, that they can sniff each other. They can check each other out, sniff each other, that kind of a thing. And that took place for a month. Now, what I did when it was time to start the bonding process, once the month was up, I started with what is called stress bonding. And typically you don't want to purposely stress out your bunny. But in this process, it helps if they are a little bit stressed. Because when you put them together in a stressful situation, the last thing on their mind is fighting. The last thing on their mind is aggression. What they're going to want to be doing at that moment is snuggle, because they're going to be looking for comfort. So I will put up a picture now of the first part of the bonding process with them, where I put them in a soft-sided pet carrier, which I do need to get another one of because the zipper broke when they were at their pet sitter. But I put them both, and it was a tight squeeze. It has to be a very small space, where they're basically forced to snuggle, but at the same time, they're stressed out, so they're going to want to snuggle anyhow. So I put them in the carrier together, and I picked it up, and I walked around, and I swung it a little bit, just gently. I mean, I didn't jostle them and like try and shake their brains out. But I just swung it around, like, the movement as if you were carrying them to the vet or wherever that you need to take them in a carrier. So they were both inside it, and I made noises on this. I dragged my fingernails along the side of the carrier. I tapped on it. I jiggled it just slightly. I carried them around, and then other times I just let it sit there, and all they did was snuggle. That's all they did. And I left them in there that way for 15-20 minutes. Because I wanted them to get comfortable with each other in that small space. So I will show you now a picture of them in the carrier together during their actual bonding process. Hey, you guys, I was super stressing out because I couldn't find the pictures of the bonding process, and I thought, oh no, I promised pictures. But even better, I have the videos. So you get to see video of them in their carrier, in the box, in the enclosure during the bonding process. I'm super excited that I forgot that I actually did videos and not just pictures. So yay, I am very excited about that. Okay, so once that 15-20 minutes in the carrier was done, I then needed to upgrade the space. Not much larger. Some people will do a bathtub. I didn't. I found a cardboard box because I had just purchased a shop vac. So the box was going to be larger than the carrier that they were in, and it allowed space for them to get away from each other. And it's a little bit of a test. They can get away from each other. When they're near each other, are they okay? So I put the box on the floor. I took them out of the carrier one by one, and I put them in the box. Now, a little bit of dominance occurred. It wasn't aggression, but Milo tried to be dominant with her, and he would chase her around a little bit and try to hump her. And he did succeed in humping her a couple of times. She would stay there and allow him to do it. So she was submitting to him. He was showing his dominance. This wasn't aggression. There was no biting. Don't feel the need to separate this behavior. It is normal, okay? As long as there's no biting, there's no bloodshed. There was no nipping. He was simply humping her. She allowed it. When he was, and you don't have the possibility of pregnancy either, so there's that. When he was done, he would just move on. They snuggled some. They sat apart some, but there was no aggression. Now, if they did start to show aggression, you would take them out of that box. A little bit of aggression you might be able to withstand. Don't separate them unless it gets dangerous. You have to let them work it out. But you don't want it to get ugly. Now, if it starts to look like it's getting ugly and it's persisting and it's not going to stop, you will take them out of that situation and you will back it up a step. This usually means that you moved too quickly. So if you move too quickly and they're just not getting along in that next step up, you will move back to stress bonding in that carrier, in that stressful situation. And then they will go right back to snuggling. You do that again, then you go back. When that is a success, you can try the larger space again. I did not have to go backwards. I put them in that box and they were perfect. He humped her. They sat separated. They sat together. And there was no aggression whatsoever because I did leave them in that carrier for like 15 to 20 minutes. I didn't make it quick. So in the box, they did perfectly fine. At that point, and I had them in that box for a good half an hour, okay? And I still made noises on the box. I ran my fingernails along the edges. I tapped it. They were perfectly fine. After that, I did put them both in here. But I stood in here with them to separate them if need be. And again, he did chase her around a little bit and humped her, which I allowed. The only time you would step in an instance like that is one time he did try and hump her head, and that is when I stepped in because that can result in injury. If he is humping her head, she is in close proximity to his genitals and can bite him, and we don't want bitten genitals. So I separated them at that point. I moved him off of her. Excuse me, guys. I do have a cold. But that only happened one time where I had to step in and I just observed them and let them go about what they were doing. And honestly, I didn't have to take a step backward. I then walked out of the space and watched from there. And honestly, that was all it was for my two. They've been perfect ever since. They've been in this enclosure ever since together. So I take them out for floor time as well. Sometimes I'll take them upstairs. I'll take them out one by one, and I'll put a baby gate up and let them roam around the upstairs hallway. And they do that together. I've done it separately with them. I've done it together with them. And they're just fine. They've never had aggression issues towards each other. It has been beautiful. Now, I can't promise you that it won't happen with you. But again, if it does, you just have to take a step backward and go back to the previous successful step. So if the previous successful step was not in their enclosure together or free roaming together, if you have free roaming bunnies, if they are not successful that way, you go back to the next successful step, say would be in the cardboard box. You would go back to that successful step and do it again, because you want their bonding experiences to end on a positive note. If you end a bonding session on a negative note, they will remember it, and it's going to make the next session difficult. So if they're having issues in this enclosure and you have to take a step backward, take that step backward right away, and go back to where they were successful, so that is the last thing that they remember. If you don't want to go back to the next step up right away, that is fine, as long as they remember that they were in this successful session that ended okay. And then what you would do for your next session, if you weren't already successful, I only had to have 3 sessions: the carrier session, the box session, and the enclosure I can't speak. The carrier session, the box session, and the enclosure session. And I did that one right after the other, so it really only took maybe 4 hours in the afternoon to get them bonded. And of course, I did observe them frequently afterwards while they were in the enclosure together, because I didn't want something to happen. But they have been perfectly fine. Again, it could just be their personalities, or it could just be that I didn't rush them, because they did sniff each other for a month before I even started bonding them. So I think that is important as well. They need to be familiar with each other's smells and things before you just start the bonding process and start moving them into bigger bonding sessions. So they were in the vicinity together for a month while her hormones were leveling out. He did get into her cage once, and all he did was chase her. And I got him out. I didn't want anything bad to happen. I didn't want her incision to open up. But I did not start the bonding process until she was a month out of her spaying. And I started with the stress bond, moved up to the box, which I kind of stressed as well with making noises on it. And then I moved them into their actual enclosure, and they've been fine ever since. If you move them into their permanent home enclosure together and you don't feel it's going well, again, move back a step and, go from there again. Give them some time to get used to that again. I forgot to stop the video to put up the next step after the stress bonding. I will do that now. So those were a few pictures of them in their box, sitting apart, sitting together, and they were in there for a good half an hour. And then after that is when I put them in their enclosure together. And again, it went very smoothly, and they've been together ever since. I'm not quite sure what else to include. Again, if a session isn't going smoothly, don't move forward, move a step back and start them where it was positive again. So if the most positive place was the stress bonding in a situation where they couldn't leave each other, where they were forced to snuggle, go back to that. Leave them in there like that again, so that they have to just be next to each other and not fight. They will want to snuggle at that point because they're looking for comfort. Go back to that if you need to, and then try moving up again. If that's not successful, go back to that stress bonding. Very important. You don't want to move too quickly ahead If there are bumps in the road, you need to take a little longer with the previous step. I got super lucky that in 4 hours in one afternoon on a Saturday, they were bonded. So, I hope that was helpful for you guys. Again, make sure that spaying and neutering is done. If you've already got your bunnies and you're waiting to bond and neither of them are spayed and neutered, or one of them is and one of them isn't, you will need to get the other one done, because they do, being intact allows for unwanted behaviors. Aggression is one of them, but because rabbits can be territorial. So you want to take away those possible unwanted behaviors before they start, before injury occurs. And it'll just make things all around easier and make your bunnies healthier. But again, you need to find an exotic vet well experienced in bunnies so that you know your bunny will be safe. You can call around to local vet clinics and ask if they have vets that are very experienced in bunnies. If they are not, move on. Sometimes you'll have to go to a neighboring town. Sometimes there just won't be any local. I do have a few that are local. Don't go to a regular dog and cat vet, even if they say they can do it. If they do not look at exotic animals, don't take them there. I don't care if the vet says I can do this, even though I'm not an exotic vet. Don't trust them. I think it's great that they feel like they can, but I'm not going to risk my bunny's health on their hunch that they can do it. You need to find somebody who definitely has been trained in the care of rabbits. But yeah, and once that is taken care of, then after the month of the leveling out of hormones, and you can do that in the same vicinity, they can both be in separate enclosures, close enough to each other to get used to each other's smells. That's definitely, I feel, important, and I think that is what helped their bonding process considerably. So I definitely feel like it is super important not to cut corners when you're trying to bond your bunnies, because cutting corners, trying to save money by not getting them fixed, is just going to be a negative for your bunny, and it's going to make bonding that much harder on you and that much harder on them. So yeah, I really hope that this information was super, super helpful for you. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will be glad to help you out any way that I can. Milo with the hay on his head. They love the romaine lettuce. They never even fight over food, you guys, so I mean, they are perfect together. And he is about 1.5 years old, ish, and she just turned a year. So they're not exactly the same age, they're not the same breed, but they are perfect together. And I think it is because I took my time, and it doesn't sound like I took my time considering as it only took me 4 hours, but they just did so well together. And I think it was thanks to them taking that month that she was healing from her surgery, taking that month to just be close to each other, but the only access they had to each other was to get used to each other's smells. I really do think that that was helpful. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope this information was helpful for you. If you have any questions, like I said, let me know, and I will do my best to help you. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I would love it if you would. I'm still trying to grow. And like this video, share it if you would like. If you know anybody who has bunnies or is just interested in bunnies and wants to get more familiar with them, I would love to be shared. I love listening to them crunch their lettuce. That's why I'm not putting music with this, so you guys can hear them too. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day.